Hi everyone, welcome to part 2. Now what we're going to do is we're going to coat the entire model in gloss varnish. And this coat of gloss varnish is going to protect all the previous coats of paint because we're now going to go in with another layer of weathering. As you can see, to apply the gloss varnish, I'm using a paintbrush, not an airbrush, which is what I normally use. Now I just wanted to take this opportunity to tell you and kind of show you that really most of these techniques that I've kind of shown in this video can be done by hand with a brush. There's no problem with that. You know, if you don't own an airbrush, you can still do pin washing by hand. You know, you can do your standard kind of blending and all of that kind of stuff to get the same results. It's just an airbrush often applies smoother coats of paint and thinner coats of paint, and also, you know, you can just do all of this kind of stuff a lot faster. But there's no problem with brush painting. If you want to go that route, you don't have an airbrush, then that's fine. By all means, go ahead. As you can see, that is the completed gloss coat. So I'm using oil paints. I'm using 3 colours. I'm using titanium white, yellow ochre and burnt umber. Now the oil paints I'm using are made by Art Studios, and this is just a random cheap craft company that I found. I picked up a whole set of their oil paints for $5 at my local craft store. I've never tried any other brands of oil paints. These are just the ones that I use because they're cheap and they seem to work, but I'm sure you could use whatever company you like and find to be good in your local area. As you can see, I'm mixing these 3 colours together to get a dark ivory sort of tone. This mix will later be used to create a streaky dust kind of effect on the armor plates of the tank. Oil paints need to be thinned down with different solvents, and here I'm using a bit of Terps which I've kept in this old Tamiya solvent-proof jar. Because of the solvents involved, oil paints will hack up any of your good brushes, so you need to use cheap synthetic brushes. Here you can see I have a few different varieties that I picked up at my local arts and crafts stores. As you can see, I begin by stippling on some of that oil paint onto all of the raised panels that I want to have that kind of dusty, dirty feel. I then rinse out my brush using the Terps. Excess Terps is removed from the brush using a piece of paper towel. The slightly moist brush is then used to lightly brush over the surface of the model. This will smear and thin out the oil paints, creating a nice, thin, dusty look. It's important to make sure that you're using brush strokes that only go up and down so you get that nice kind of rain, sort of streaky sort of look. If you go the other way, you'll kind of mess up the technique. So just go up and down and it should turn out pretty nicely. I occasionally rinse out my brush in the Terps again, and again I remove any excess Terps on a paper towel. It's a very easy technique to do. It's quick, it's simple, but it can get really nice looking results if done correctly. So now I'm going to create my snow effects. As you can see here, I've got a small mixing cup, and into that I'm placing about a 1-to-1 mixture of white PVA glue and bicarb of soda. Now these 2 different ingredients are going to be mixed together until they are smoothly combined. The end result should be a white, shiny, creamy, sort of textured paste, very similar to beaten egg whites. In my opinion, this is the best way to get a nice thick snow effect. I've seen all sorts of different snow flocks, I've tried them all out, and I always come back to bicarb of soda. I just think it works the best and it gets the nicest, thickest, shiniest result out of the lot of them. All I'm doing now is I'm applying this white paste thickly to the model's base. I'm just using a plastic spatula and just fiddling around with it, you know, neatly painting it all over the entire base, gooping it on nice and thick, and then I'll let it dry. One thing you do need to keep in mind is you do need to work reasonably efficiently. You don't have to rush, but just be a bit careful because the PVA glue can actually dry pretty quickly, and you don't want to have it kind of partially forming a skin while you're still messing with it, because you can, you know, get strange sort of textures that you want to avoid. So just be efficient, don't rush it, but, you know, don't be too slow. I've now picked a couple of decals that I think will look good on my tank, and I've placed them just in some water to soak for around 30 seconds to a minute. I then apply some Vallejo decal medium to the surface that I want the decal to be applied to. I pick up the decal using a pair of tweezers, and with a brush moistened in the decal medium, I begin to push the decal off the piece of paper and onto the model itself. I then use the same moist brush to manipulate the decal into the desired position. I then roll a Q-tip over the surface of the decal. This is going to remove any excess liquid and it will smooth down the decal nicely. It's important to be careful because if you're too rough, then you could damage the decal. Before assembly, the model is given a coat of matte varnish. I now begin final assembly of the model. I apply glue to the tracks on the tank and I glue it firmly down to the base of the model. I'm quite generous with the glue as a strong bond is required, and I make sure that I leave the model to dry for quite a long time, so it's a solid platform for me to then go and attach the turret. After the tank is glued firmly in place, I begin to attach the gun turret. I liberally apply superglue to all the areas that need to be stuck together. I then simply place the two surfaces together and firmly press. I then allow the glue to dry. And this is the completed model in all its glory. Thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed it, hopefully you've learnt something, and I will see you in a later video.